You may remember last year, antibody tests got a lot of attention as folks wanted to figure out if they'd had COVID and were protected from the virus. Now, antibody tests are back in the spotlight, this time related to vaccine protection. So let's verify. Can an antibody test prove if you're protected by the COVID vaccines? Our sources: an infectious disease epidemiologist, an infectious disease physician, a research fellow, and a rheumatologist. Experts think antibodies are a key part of COVID protection. Recent studies show a direct connection between antibody level and COVID immunity.
Not only are you producing many antibodies, but those antibodies are then able to actually neutralize the virus, which is what we need them to do.
But Dr. Emily Ricotta, an infectious disease epidemiologist, says testing individuals for immunity is tricky.
Because we don't know what these results really mean.
A key concern is the correlate of protection. That's the number of antibodies the average person needs to be protected from COVID. The problem? Experts don't know that number, and they say most commercial antibody tests only offer vague information about your levels.
So we can't just say, oh, you have antibodies, ergo you're protected.
On the flip side, those with no antibodies after vaccination may still be protected. That's because your body should produce two things in response to a COVID vaccine: antibodies and T-cells. The antibodies protect you from ever getting COVID, and T-cells keep you from getting sick once you have the virus. Even if you have no antibodies, experts say you may have enough T-cells to be protected from symptomatic COVID.
That's equally important when it comes to a vaccine response.
Dr. Amish Adalja is an infectious disease physician at Johns Hopkins.
There's a reason to be worried if you don't have antibodies after a vaccine, but it's not the whole picture. You'd have to couple that with knowledge about the person's T-cell reactivity.
T-cell tests exist, but they're hard to come by. And just like with antibodies, experts don't have a correlate of protection, meaning they don't know how many T-cells you need to be immune.
I think we need a lot more data to understand what the phenomenon is that's going on.
That's a key reason the FDA does not recommend people test their antibody level to assess COVID immunity after vaccination. But some doctors are testing immunocompromised patients to better advise them. Dr. Victoria Shammigan is the director of rheumatology at George Washington University.
Obviously, it doesn't measure everything, but it just gives you a guide of how strong was their response to the vaccine.
But even that strategy is being debated.
I do think that's a reasonable approach.
Dr. Brian Boyarsky is a research fellow at Johns Hopkins studying antibodies in immunocompromised people.
It's much more information to know that someone doesn't have any antibodies at all.
I think we don't have a strong enough evidence base to recommend this.
Dr. Adalja is skeptical of offering advice to immunocompromised patients based on antibody tests.
It's fine if they want to do it, but I just would do it with the caveat that it's unclear what it actually means.
So we can verify antibodies are a big part of this protection puzzle. But right now, antibody tests alone can't prove whether or not you're protected by the COVID vaccines. With your Verify, I'm Gabe Cohen.